You think you know everything about Gas Monkey Garage? Think again. What I'm about to reveal will completely change how you see Richard Rawlings and his legendary shop forever. This isn't just another car build story. This is about a shocking transformation that nobody saw coming, and it all started with one seemingly impossible decision that left everyone questioning everything they thought they knew. Picture this, it's SEMA 2025, the biggest automotive showcase on the planet, and Richard Rawlings is standing next to what might be the most controversial build Gas Monkey Garage has ever created. But here's the twist. This isn't your typical Gas Monkey project. This is something that defies everything the shop has built their reputation on, and the story behind it will blow your mind. For years, Gas Monkey Garage has been synonymous with a specific style. Fast and Loud wasn't just the name of their show, it was their entire philosophy. Raw power, aggressive styling, and builds that screamed their presence from miles away. Richard Rawlings built an empire on this formula, turning wrenches into television gold and garage dreams into reality for millions of fans worldwide. But something changed. Something fundamental shifted in the mind of the man who once said he'd rather be caught dead than build anything subtle. And that shift led to the most unexpected revelation in automotive reality TV history. The story begins months before SEMA 2025, when Richard received a call that would challenge everything he stood for. Andrew, the owner of System X, approached him with a proposition that seemed simple enough on the surface: build a 1970 Chevelle for the show. Nothing unusual there, right? Gas Monkey had built countless muscle cars over the years. But here's where it gets interesting. Instead of dictating every detail like most clients do, Andrew made an unusual request. After agreeing on the basic drivetrain specifications and performance targets, he told Richard something that would haunt him for months. Do whatever you want. Those 4 words would become the catalyst for the most dramatic philosophical shift in Gas Monkey Garage history. Now, you might think that creative freedom would be exactly what Richard Rawlings wanted. After all, this is a man who's built his career on bold choices and refusing to play it safe. But this time was different. This time, Richard found himself questioning everything he'd ever believed about what makes a car truly spectacular. The first sign that something had changed came during the initial design phase. Anyone familiar with Gas Monkey builds knows they typically follow a predictable pattern. Take something classic, add massive power, make it loud, make it aggressive, and make sure everyone within a 5-mile radius knows you're coming. But as Richard stared at the bare Chevelle shell, something unprecedented happened. He started sketching ideas that went against every instinct he'd developed over decades in the business. Instead of planning for the biggest possible engine bay to house a monster motor, he found himself thinking about proportions. Instead of imagining the loudest exhaust system money could buy, he was considering how sound could be refined rather than amplified. Instead of visualizing the most aggressive body modifications possible, he was contemplating subtlety. The revelation hit him like a lightning bolt. What if the most revolutionary thing Gas Monkey Garage could do wasn't to build the loudest, most aggressive car possible, but to prove they could build something that whispered instead of screamed while still being absolutely devastating? This internal struggle consumed Richard for weeks. He'd built his entire brand on a specific philosophy, and now he was considering abandoning it for something completely different. The psychological weight of this decision was enormous. Would fans understand? Would they accept this dramatic departure from everything Gas Monkey represented? Would this bold move be seen as evolution or betrayal? But the more Richard thought about it, the more convinced he became that this was exactly what Gas Monkey Garage needed. Not just for the brand, but for his own growth as a builder and as a person. The automotive world was changing, and maybe it was time for Gas Monkey to change with it. The build process became unlike anything Gas Monkey had ever undertaken. Instead of the usual approach of throwing massive modifications at every surface, Richard and his team found themselves exercising unprecedented restraint. Every decision was measured, calculated, and refined. They weren't just building a car, they were conducting an experiment in automotive philosophy. Take the body modifications, for example. Traditional Gas Monkey wisdom would have called for the most extreme wide-body kit available, something that announced its presence from 3 blocks away. Instead, Richard made a decision that shocked his entire team. They would make the car wider to accommodate massive 355 rear tires. But they would do it so subtly that most people wouldn't even notice unless they really looked. This wasn't just about aesthetics. It was about proving a point. Could Gas Monkey Garage create something that only true enthusiasts would fully appreciate? Could they build a car that rewarded careful observation rather than demanding immediate attention? It was a complete reversal of everything they'd ever done. The suspension setup presented another philosophical challenge. Gas Monkey builds were known for their straightforward approaches to performance, ESEA, more power, better traction, louder exhaust. But this Chevelle demanded something different. Richard worked with SpeedTech Performance to create a rear suspension system that incorporated a 25-degree angle on the visible components, creating visual interest through engineering rather than flashy paint schemes. Even the exhaust system broke new ground for the shop. Instead of the typical dual side exit setup that most Gas Monkey builds featured, Richard collaborated with MagnaFlow to create something unprecedented: exhaust tips that emerged through the rear taillight area. When the MagnaFlow team first heard the idea, they thought Richard had lost his mind. "You're insane! It'll never work," they told him. But they made it happen anyway, creating a system that was both functional and completely unexpected. The engine choice revealed another layer of this philosophical transformation. While Gas Monkey had always been about maximum displacement and maximum noise, this build featured a more sophisticated approach. The LME 427 with a Magnus supercharger, backed by an 8-speed automatic transmission, represented a balance between devastating performance and everyday usability. It could be a monster when you wanted it to be aggressive, but it could also be a comfortable cruiser when the situation called for restraint. But here's where the story takes its most unexpected turn: the interior design philosophy. Richard made a decision that would have been unthinkable for any previous Gas Monkey build. He kept the center console extremely low, creating an open, intimate space that prioritized comfort and connection over aggressive styling. This wasn't about racing-inspired cockpit design or maximum performance functionality, 5CG. This was about creating a space where people could actually enjoy spending time together. The paint scheme represented the ultimate expression of this new philosophy. Instead of the wild graphics and bold color combinations that Gas Monkey was famous for, Richard chose deep black 6. One of the most challenging colors to execute properly, and one that relies entirely on perfect bodywork and flawless finish quality, rather than flashy design elements to make an impact. As the build progressed, something remarkable happened within the Gas Monkey team. Initially resistant to this dramatic departure from their established style, the crew began to embrace the challenge of proving they could excel at a completely different type of build. They weren't just creating another Gas Monkey Garage project, they were redefining what Gas Monkey Garage could be. The roof chop exemplified this new attention to detail and proportion. Instead of the dramatic modifications typical of their previous builds, they dropped the roofline by just 2 inches, enough to completely change the car's visual profile without making it look like a caricature of itself. It was restraint in service of elegance, a concept that would have been foreign to Gas Monkey Garage just a year earlier. When SEMA 2025 arrived, Richard found himself in an unprecedented position. He was about to unveil a car that represented everything Gas Monkey Garage had never been, while simultaneously proving everything they could become. The nervous energy was palpable as the cover came off the Chevelle for the first time. The reaction was immediate and electric. Industry professionals who had dismissed Gas Monkey builds as too aggressive or too flashy found themselves studying every detail of this Chevelle with newfound respect. The car demanded careful observation to fully appreciate exactly what Richard had intended. It wasn't shouting for attention, it was quietly commanding respect. But the real revelation came from Richard himself. Standing next to this unprecedented build, he made a statement that shocked everyone who heard it. "This is something we've never built before, and it needed to be our own." The emphasis wasn't on horsepower numbers or quarter-mile times. It was on craftsmanship, proportion, and sophisticated engineering. The technical specifications told only part of the story. Yes, the car was incredibly powerful with its supercharged 427 and 8-speed automatic transmission. Yes, it featured advanced suspension components and premium wheels and tires. But the real story was in the details that most people would never notice. The subtle body modifications, the perfectly executed paint, the innovative exhaust routing, the attention to interior comfort. Perhaps the most telling moment came when Richard described his design philosophy for the color coding of functional components. Anything rigid and structural was painted red, while anything that moved was finished in black. This wasn't just aesthetic choice. It was systematic thinking applied to visual design, something completely new for Gas Monkey Garage. The undercarriage told its own story of transformation. Gas Monkey builds had always been about what you could see, the flashy exterior modifications and aggressive styling cues. But this Chevelle was just as beautiful underneath as it was on top, with carefully finished suspension components and exhaust routing that created visual drama through engineering excellence rather than flashy paint schemes. The SpeedTech Performance chassis modifications represented months of careful planning and execution. Instead of simply bolting on the most extreme components available, Richard and his team worked to create a system that looked as good as it performed. The attention to detail extended to areas that most people would never see, but that true enthusiasts would immediately appreciate. The 45-day build timeline added another layer of pressure to this already ambitious project. Transforming a stripped Chevelle shell into a show-quality masterpiece in such a short time frame would have been challenging under any circumstances. But doing it while fundamentally reimagining the Gas Monkey Garage philosophy made it seem nearly impossible. Yet, the team pulled it off, creating something that exceeded even Richard's expectations. The finished Chevelle represented more than just another successful build. It proved that Gas Monkey Garage could compete at the highest levels of automotive craftsmanship while maintaining their own unique identity. The implications of this transformation extend far beyond a single car build. Richard Rawlings had spent decades building a brand around a specific philosophy, and in one dramatic move, he proved that evolution and growth were not only possible but essential. The automotive world was watching to see if Gas Monkey Garage could adapt to changing expectations while maintaining their core identity. The answer, revealed at SEMA 2025, was a resounding yes. The Chevelle proved that Gas Monkey Garage could build cars that whispered instead of screamed while still delivering devastating performance. They could create vehicles that rewarded careful observation rather than demanding immediate attention. They could execute builds that satisfied both casual observers and hardcore enthusiasts. But perhaps the most significant revelation was personal rather than professional. Richard Rawlings had rediscovered his passion for the craft of automotive building by challenging himself to excel in areas he'd never explored. The satisfaction of creating something subtle and sophisticated proved to be just as rewarding as building the loudest, most aggressive cars possible. This transformation didn't represent an abandonment of everything Gas Monkey Garage stood for. It represented an expansion of their capabilities and philosophy. They could still build fast and loud cars when the project called for it, but now they'd proven they could also create sophisticated, refined vehicles that competed with the best builders in the world. The unexpected truth about Richard Rawlings and Gas Monkey Garage isn't that they changed who they were, it's that they discovered who they could become. And that revelation has implications that extend far beyond a single car build, setting the stage for an entirely new chapter in one of automotive television's most successful stories.